British schoolboys
hmm
who get stranded on this deserted island after a plane crash.
Yeah, so like no adults, no rules. Kind of sounds like a dream, right?
At first it does. Hey everyone, and welcome to ShakesPods. We're going deep on Lord of the Flies today by William Golding.
Yeah, it's a book I think a lot of secondary school students are reading right now.
Yeah, it's one of those classics, but I think it's a lot more than your average boring classic.
Oh, absolutely. This book, I mean, it grabs you and asks some really tough questions about human nature.
Right, and it's about these British schoolboys
hmm
who get stranded on this deserted island after a plane crash.
Yeah, so like no adults, no rules. Kind of sounds like a dream,
At
right?
first it does.
Right.
Like you're thinking, oh, this is amazing.
Exactly. I mean, at first they're all excited about the freedom. And they elect Ralph as their leader, somebody who represents order and reason.
Right, someone to keep them on track.
Right. And they even find this conch shell,
Oh, yeah.
this like beautiful symbol of civilization. And they decide, okay, whoever holds the conch, they get to speak, like their own little island democracy.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that detail. But then it kind of takes a turn, right?
It does, yeah.
Because we've got Jack, the leader of the hunters,
Yeah.
who starts to kind of challenge Ralph a little bit.
Right. He starts appealing to the boys' more primal instincts.
Yeah.
And suddenly, things like hunting and just surviving become more important than rules or trying to get rescued.
It's funny how quickly that happens.
It is. It's really interesting how Golding uses this conflict to explore, that theme of civilization versus savagery.
Right.
And as Jack's influence grows, the boys start neglecting the signal fire. Their only hope of being rescued. It's like they're losing sight of what really matters.
Yeah, they get distracted by these other more immediate desires.
Really.
I also think about that conch shell, right, that we talked about. It's so fragile, and at one point it just gets totally smashed.
Yeah, it literally mirrors the breakdown of their little civilized society. It's a really pivotal moment in the book. It shows how fragile things are, how easily order can, descend into chaos when fear and instinct take over.
And speaking of fear, we can't forget about the beast, right? This creature. Or is it a creature?
Right.
That's haunting the island.
It's so brilliant how Golding does this. He leaves it open to interpretation. I mean, the beast could be a real creature.
Right.
But it's more likely a symbol of their own fears, their savagery, It's like this darkness inside them. It's taking shape.
Yeah, and he even says at one point, maybe there is a beast. Maybe it's only us.
Ooh, yeah. That one gives me chills.
Yeah, it really suggests that we all have that capacity for good and evil.
Yeah.
Inside us.
Right. And it's our choices that determine which side wins. It really is something to think about. And it's one of the things that makes this book so powerful for secondary school students, I think. It forces you to confront these uncomfortable truths about yourself and the world.
It's like the book is holding up this mirror
Yeah.
to human nature and showing us everything, the good and the bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of which, let's talk about Simon for a second. He's interesting. He seems to really get what's happening on the island.
He does, right. He's the quiet one, kind of introspective, almost like a prophet,
Yeah.
He goes off into the jungle by himself, trying to understand the beast. And what he finds out is really chilling.
I know. He realizes that it isn't some kind of external monster. It's something inside them, something darker.
Yeah, and the other boys, they're so consumed by their fear and their power struggles, they can't see it.
Right. They miss it.
And then Simon tries to explain it to them.
Yeah.
And they mistake him for the beast.
So sad.
I know. And they kill him in this crazy ritualistic dance. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. It shows how easily things like reason and compassion can just vanish.
Totally. When fear takes over and that mob mentality.
Right. It makes you think about how often that happens.
You see it all the time in history. It's a warning about blind obedience,
It is.
Groupthink. When people stop thinking for themselves and just follow the crowd, really terrible things can happen.
Well, that's depressing. So is there any hope for these boys? Can they be redeemed?
Well, the ending is controversial. The boys are rescued, eventually, by a naval officer.
Okay.
A symbol of adult authority. Civilization's back.
Right.
But the question is, are they really safe?
Right, because they might be off the island, but I can't imagine they're just going to forget everything that happened.
And, Golding gives us this haunting image of Ralph weeping
Yeah.
Or the end of innocence,
Yeah.
the darkness of man's heart. It suggests that a part of them will always be haunted by what happened.
And he just leaves us with that question, right? Like, can innocence ever really be regained?
It's a heavy question.
But I think it's one of the reasons why this book is so valuable,
Yeah.
especially for young people.
It is. It makes you confront those hard truths about human nature, the choices we make.
It makes you think critically, question the world around you. It's not an easy read, but it stays with you.
It does, and that's what makes it great literature. So we've talked about a lot of big themes. What do you think are some of the most important things for secondary school students to focus on?
For sure.
Like key takeaways?
Yeah, like if you're in class right now and you're reading this book, what do you need to really understand?
The big ones, I think, are the conflict between civilization and savagery,
Right.
the dangers of fear and mob mentality,
Yeah,
and then the importance of individual responsibility.
those are all good.
And then there are all the quotes.
So many great quotes.
I know, so many that really hit hard.
Like the one, maybe there is a beast.
Yeah.
Maybe it's only us. Just gives me chills every time.
Yeah. It speaks to that potential for darkness that we all have. And then we've got to have rules and obey them. After all, we're not savages, we're English, and the English are best at everything.
Oh, I love that one. So ironic.
I know. But it highlights how fragile civilization is and how easily things can fall apart.
But, the one that I always think about is, the thing is, fear can't hurt you any more than a dream. Because it reminds us that our fears are often way worse in our heads than they are in reality.
I like that one. It's a good reminder.
It is. It's also about how fear can be used to manipulate people, right? Like what happened with Jack on the island.
Yeah. It connects back to power and how it can be abused. Jack really used the boys' fear of the beast
Yeah, I did.
to control them, to
Yeah.
get what he wanted.
And you see that in the real world, too.
All the time. Fear is used to control people, whether it's through propaganda or intimidation or just peer pressure.
Yeah, and it makes you realize that we all have a choice.
Right.
We can choose to be kind, or we can choose to be cruel.
Exactly.
We choose to be reasonable, or we can give in to our impulses.
And that's a message that's still relevant today. So one thing I've been thinking about is what Golding is trying to say about leadership. What do you think?
That's interesting. Because we have Ralph and Jack, and they're very different leaders.
They are.
Ralph's all about rules, getting rescued, being civilized.
Right. A more democratic approach.
And then Jack's all about hunting, power.
Yeah. More authoritarian. Primal.
And it's Jack who wins in the end.
He does. Which makes you wonder, what does that say about us? What kind of leaders are we drawn to, especially when we're afraid?
Ooh, that's a scary thought. Does that mean democracy and reason are not actually that strong?
It's something to think about, isn't it? And that's what makes Golding so brilliant. He doesn't give us easy answers.
He makes us think for ourselves.
He forces us to confront these hard truths about ourselves and the world.
And that's what makes Lord of the Flies such a timeless book.
Absolutely. And for secondary school students, it's a book that can really start a conversation. It's not just about analyzing the plot or the characters.
Right.
It's about understanding ourselves, the choices we make.
It's about seeing the potential for both good and evil inside all of us, and choosing to be the kind of leader, kind of person who brings light into the darkness. One thing I was thinking about was the island itself.
Right.
How it starts off so beautiful, like a paradise.
Right.
But then as things get worse, as the boys lose it,
Yeah.
the island almost becomes scary.
It does, doesn't it? It's like it reflects their inner turmoil. It's like the island becomes a microcosm
Yeah.
of the whole world, this stage where we see human nature play out.
Right. It's a reminder that even in the prettiest places, there could be this darkness underneath.
Yeah.
And speaking of symbols, I keep thinking about the fire.
The fire.
Yeah, it seems like it's more than just a way to signal for help.
Oh, yeah. It definitely represents hope, civilization, rescue. When the boys take care of the fire, it means they haven't given up yet on being rescued, on holding on to the outside world.
Yeah, and when they don't care for it,
Right. Yeah.
it's like they're losing their hope. And it makes you think about not just like a physical fire, but also like an internal flame.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. Like a spark of human decency.
Exactly. And it can be nurtured.
Yeah.
Or it could be, stamped out.
Totally. And it goes back to choice.
Yeah.
Are they going to keep that flame going?
Or let it go out. Which leads me to think about that ending. Like, what happens to them after they get rescued?
Oh, I know. That's the big question, isn't it?
Do they go back to their old lives?
Right.
Or are they forever changed?
It's so smart how Golding leaves it open-ended.
He does, doesn't he?
You know, the naval officer shows up, you think, okay, order is restored.
Right back to civilization.
But those boys have been through a lot. And there's that image of Ralph weeping.
Oh, yeah.
Weeping for the end of innocence.
Yeah.
For how dark the human heart can be. It makes you think, like, a part of him has died on that island.
It does. He can't just go back to the way he was.
Exactly. So then you're left with that question, can we ever really go back? Can innocence ever be regained?
It's intense for a book about kids on an island.
It is.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it so great, so powerful, because it makes us think about these big things.
About ourselves, about the world.
Yeah. And, you know, it reminds us that civilization and savagery, that's not just something on a deserted island. That's happening inside each of us.
Every day.
Exactly. And Lord of the Flies, it's like a warning.
Yeah.
Reminding us to choose, you know, kindness over cruelty, reason over impulse, hope over despair.
So even though this book is definitely on a lot of school reading lists, it's so much more than just homework.
It really is.
It can make you question everything, make you think in a whole new way, maybe even change how you see the world.
It does, doesn't it? It asks those big questions. And sometimes, you know, the best lessons are the ones that make you uncomfortable, the ones that make you look inside yourself.
Just make you face the darkness and the light. Well, thanks for exploring Lord of the Flies with us today, everyone.
Been fun.
And remember, that island, it's not just in the book. It's a metaphor for the world we live in and the choices we make every day.